She walked into the building she owned, and they told her to wait outside. No one knew she was the new CEO. No one even offered her a seat. But 1 minute later, she called security and fired the entire executive team. This isn't fiction. It's the true story of a black woman who turned disrespect into domination. Stay with us. Delivery goes around back, she said flatly, eyes still fixed on her screen. But Jacqueline Thomas wasn't holding any boxes. She wasn't delivering food. She wasn't lost. She wasn't confused. She was wearing a simple black coat with no loud jewelry, no brand-name handbag, and no assistant by her side. Just a quiet, powerful energy. With calm steps, she had just entered the corporate headquarters of Whitestone Tech, a multi-billion-dollar tech company based in the heart of the city. What no one there knew was that she now owned it. Just 2 weeks ago, Jacqueline had completed a silent buyout. Working behind the scenes through a series of strategic investments and shell acquisitions, she had become the majority shareholder and new CEO of Whitestone Tech. But no press release was made. No internal memo was sent. Not yet. She wanted to see the culture for herself before making her presence official. Judged by appearance. As she stood near the front desk, an executive in a sleek gray suit walked past her. He looked at her for half a second and said under his breath, "Lost again," before chuckling with his colleague. Jacqueline simply smiled. She'd heard worse in her life. Much worse. From being dismissed in meetings to being told she was too aggressive when she stood up for herself, from being the only black woman in the room to having her ideas stolen and repackaged by others. Jacqueline had been through it all, but she had never stopped moving forward. And now, she was standing quietly inside a company that had no idea they were about to answer to her. The elevator ride of realization. She stepped into the executive elevator. The security guard inside paused, puzzled. He asked if she had access. She calmly pressed the top floor. It worked. He blinked, slightly embarrassed, but didn't say a word. She just smiled again. The doors opened to the executive suite. Glass walls, modern art, the scent of overpriced coffee, and the hum of power conversations. An assistant rushed up, blocking her path. "Excuse me, ma'am. This floor is for executive personnel only," he said sternly. "I'm exactly where I need to be," Jacqueline replied. "I'm going to have to ask you to." Just then, another man, this time the company's chief legal officer, stepped out of a nearby office. He stopped mid-sentence when he saw her. His face changed instantly. He knew. He had seen the final documents. He quickly walked over and said, "Ms. Thomas, welcome." The assistant's mouth fell open. "What?" he whispered, confused. The chatter around the executive floor began to shift. Heads turned. Whispers spread. Someone pulled out their phone and started searching her name. A few recognized her photo from a Forbes article years ago, the quiet billionaire building empires behind the curtain. The boardroom shock. Minutes later, Jacqueline entered the main boardroom. The board had already gathered for what they thought was a routine quarterly update. One executive scoffed. "Why is the delivery woman here?" Another leaned back and whispered, "Security's really slipping these days." Jacqueline walked to the head of the table, pulled out her tablet, and placed it calmly in front of her. She looked up and spoke softly but clearly. "My name is Jacqueline Thomas, and as of 2 weeks ago, I am your new CEO." Silence. Dead silence. One board member burst into awkward laughter, thinking it was a prank. "Is this some kind of joke?" Jacqueline tapped her tablet. Instantly, the large screen behind her lit up with legal documents, signatures, stock transfer notices, and acquisition filings, all pointing to one truth. She now owned controlling interest in Whitestone Tech. The laughter stopped. Mouths dropped. Some turned pale. Jacqueline stood still, her voice calm as ever. "I've been observing this company for the past year. What I saw today, and what I've heard walking these halls, confirms the problem." She paused, then looked around the room. "This is a company built on exclusion, arrogance, and entitlement. That ends today. You're all fired." And then came the sentence no one expected. "You're all fired." She wasn't shouting. She didn't need to. Her words were clear, deliberate, and final. One VP stood up. "You can't just walk in here and—" "I can," Jacqueline interrupted. "And I just did." Within minutes, her legal team entered the room and began handing out official termination letters. HR representatives were already waiting in the wings. Desperate executives scrambled. Some tried to talk their way out. Some apologized. One even tried to cry. But Jacqueline didn't move. She had given her entire life to being overlooked, undervalued, underestimated. Today, she flipped the entire script. The rise of a new leader. Later that day, Jacqueline addressed the rest of the company in a staff-wide announcement. She appeared on screens across every floor. My name is Jacqueline Thomas. I started from nothing. I worked twice as hard for half the credit. But I never stopped believing I belonged. She paused. Whitestone Tech is no longer just a company for the privileged. It is now a company for the capable. A company that respects talent, no matter what it looks like. Applause broke out across departments. Some employees cried. Many smiled for the first time in months. Change had come. Real change. Born and raised in the heart of Detroit, Jacqueline Thomas didn't come from privilege. She didn't grow up in a fancy neighborhood. She didn't have family connections or big opportunities handed to her. What she had was grit. Her mother, a factory worker by day and waitress by night, juggled 2 jobs just to keep food on the table. Her father? He walked out when Jacqueline was just 5 years old. From then on, it was just her mom, and the reality of survival. By the age of 13, while other kids played after school, Jacqueline was out on the corner selling candy bars. Not for fun, but to help keep the lights on. When other kids complained about homework, she was helping her mom clip coupons or stretch a dollar. But even in the struggle, Jacqueline had a dream. Education was her weapon. She wasn't just a hustler. She was brilliant. Jacqueline stayed up late studying, often by candlelight when the electricity got cut off. She taught herself how to code from free library books. She entered every essay contest she could find. And when the time came, all that hard work paid off. She earned a full scholarship to Howard University, where she majored in computer science. She didn't just graduate. She graduated top of her class, earning respect and admiration from both students and professors. But she wasn't done. She set her sights higher. And with pure determination and razor-sharp focus, she earned her MBA from Harvard, a black girl from the Detroit streets, now walking the halls of the Ivy League. She didn't just work hard, she worked smart. From garage dreams to million-dollar deals. After graduation, Jacqueline turned down 6-figure job offers from tech giants. Why? Because she had her own vision. She went back home, cleared out her mom's garage, and started her first tech company with a borrowed laptop and a second-hand desk. While some doubted her, she hired others who had been doubted too. People with talent, but no titles, heart, but no connections. She built software tools for small businesses, real tools that solved real problems. And it worked. Within just 6 years, Jacqueline's company had grown from a tiny team of underdogs to a multi-million-dollar enterprise. She sold it for a massive profit, but didn't stop there. She took that money and invested it into her next company, and then another. She built, scaled, and sold. Every move was quiet, strategic, intentional. She didn't need headlines. She needed impact. Target locked. Whitestone Tech. And then came Whitestone Tech. From the outside, it was a polished, impressive company. Glass buildings, high-profile clients, billion-dollar branding. But Jacqueline knew how to see beneath the surface. She dug deeper. Behind the PR smiles and corporate buzzwords, she found a toxic culture. Employees were overworked and underappreciated. Innovation was stifled by fear. Promotions went to the same kind of people, white, male-connected. Black women? Almost invisible. Jacqueline saw the signs. She'd lived them before, and she was done watching from the sidelines. This time, she wasn't coming to ask for a job or pitch a partnership. She was coming to own the table. The silent takeover. Jacqueline knew better than to walk in the front door waving a flag. Power moves are often made in silence. Using a holding company, she began acquiring shares, quietly, strategically. One investor here, another board seat there. She made offers that couldn't be refused. And then, overnight, it happened. She acquired 76% of Whitestone Tech. With that, she became the new CEO, not through favoritism or fame, but through strategy investment, and vision. And almost no one saw it coming. Not the board, not the executive team, not the smug directors who had spent years gatekeeping the company for people like her. A new kind of leadership. When she finally walked through the front doors of Whitestone Tech, there was no red carpet, no fanfare. The receptionist didn't even look up. But Jacqueline didn't need to be recognized right away. She already owned the building. She didn't come to flex power. She came to rebuild a culture. A culture where talent speaks louder than titles. Where women, especially women of color, could finally rise without begging for permission. She had once sold candy to keep her family's lights on. Now, she was lighting the path for the next generation of dreamers who looked like her. Back in the lobby of Whitestone Tech, Jacqueline Thomas stood quietly. No entourage, no press conference, no announcement. Just a woman in a black coat holding a phone, waiting. Security had already walked past her 3 times, each one of them completely unaware of who she really was. They were used to a certain image of power, men in tailored suits, expensive watches, loud entrances. But Jacqueline didn't need any of that. She had already made the biggest move. And now it was time. She pulled out her phone, dialed a private number, and said just 2 simple words. It's time. Sudden shift in the air. Within seconds, the massive flat-screen monitors around the lobby began to flicker. The usual company news feed disappeared. And then new words appeared in bold, scrolling text. Welcome our new CEO, Jacqueline Thomas. The lobby went silent. Then chaos. Phones began to ring. Assistants spilled out of elevators. Managers rushed out of their offices, scanning the room, confused and panicked. A few gasped. A few whispered. Some just stared. And Jacqueline? She stood right where she was, calm, centered, completely unbothered. A man in a navy suit, clearly from the executive team, finally approached her. His confident swagger melted into awkward confusion. He looked at her, half laughing. Wait. You're Ms. Thomas? Jacqueline nodded once, slowly. He fumbled for words. We weren't told you were coming in today. Jacqueline met his eyes without blinking. That's the point, she replied. Then she walked right past him. No hesitation, no apologies. She headed straight toward the boardroom, where the so-called leaders of the company were already gathering in panic. Entering the lion's den, the boardroom was buzzing with nervous voices. People were trying to understand what had just happened. How did this happen? Who signed off on this? Why didn't we know? And then, silence fell as the doors opened. Jacqueline stepped in. For a moment, no one said a word. All eyes were on her. Some board members blinked in confusion. Others stared, jaws slack. One man actually stood up, as if refusing to believe the moment was real. She walked calmly to the head of the table, placed her phone down, and looked up. I'm Jacqueline Thomas, she said, voice strong and steady. As of 2 weeks ago, I became the majority shareholder of Whitestone Tech. And as of this morning, I am your new chief executive officer. Dead. Silence. Disbelief turns to panic. One executive scoffed. This is absurd. Another looked toward legal counsel. Is this even real? Jacqueline didn't argue. She simply tapped her phone, and once again, screens around the boardroom came alive. Legal documents, purchase agreements, signature logs, ownership breakdowns. There it was in black and white. 76% ownership, CEO appointment, full legal authority. One woman in HR gasped. A man from finance dropped his pen. Who approved this? Someone finally muttered. Jacqueline smiled faintly. You did. You just didn't know it. The reckoning. Now the room was tense. The men who had laughed in their corner offices, the women who had been too afraid to speak up, the managers who had ignored emails and rejected ideas based on who sent them. They were all facing the consequences now. I didn't come here to play games, Jacqueline said. I've spent my life watching companies like this one make all the wrong people feel small. She stood taller. From today forward, that changes. She looked around the room. You spent too long building a system that rewards arrogance and punishes authenticity. A place where people of color are seen but not heard. Where women get asked to prove themselves twice as hard for half the recognition. No one said a word. Jacqueline's eyes narrowed slightly. You know exactly what I'm talking about. Time's up. Then came the words that would send shockwaves across the entire company. If you've ever used your position to bully, exclude, harass, or silence others, this is your last meeting. Gasps echoed. I've already reviewed the internal reports. I know who's contributed and who's held this company back. Jacqueline pointed toward the screen, where a list of names began to scroll. Executives, directors, department heads, you're all being let go. Effective immediately. One man stood up. You can't do this. She raised an eyebrow. Actually, I can, and I just did. A new chapter begins. Within an hour, HR began delivering termination letters. Security escorted out senior executives who, just a day earlier, thought they were untouchable. And in their place, Jacqueline began rebuilding the company from the inside out. She called in voices that had been ignored. She promoted overlooked talent. She opened up space at the table for brilliance that had long been hidden behind cubicles and closed doors. And word spread fast. Employees on every floor began to whisper in awe. Did you see her? She fired the whole leadership team. She's the new CEO, and she's not playing. Inside the Whitestone Tech boardroom, you could cut the tension with a knife. The room was cold, not in temperature, but in energy. The same executives who had laughed at Jacqueline just an hour ago were now sitting stiffly in leather chairs, adjusting their ties, trying to look calm. Some gave forced smiles. Others refused to meet her eyes. They all knew something had shifted, and no one knew exactly how far it would go. At the head of the table, Jacqueline Thomas took her seat. No fanfare, no raised voice, no dramatic entrance. Just calm, quiet authority. She placed a thick black folder on the table. Its label, bold and unmistakable. Toxic Management Review. The list that no one wanted to be on. Jacqueline opened the folder slowly, deliberately. Inside were 6 neatly organized files, each one with a name, each one packed with evidence. HR complaints, exit interviews, anonymous surveys, emails, and behavioral investigations. It wasn't gossip. It was proof. These weren't just executives with bad attitudes. They were the ones who had created a culture of fear, blocking promotions, mocking diversity efforts, gaslighting employees, and covering up real abuse. Some had even gone as far as retaliating against employees who spoke up. They had built careers on intimidation and exclusion. But now, Jacqueline had the receipts. No need to shout. She looked at the 6 men seated across from her. Not one woman among them. They shifted uncomfortably as she slowly read out each of their names. No one interrupted. No one dared. Then, in a voice barely louder than a whisper, she said, "Effective immediately. Your services are no longer required." Silence. The kind of silence that screams louder than any explosion. For a few seconds, no one moved. Then came the murmurs. Confusion. Disbelief. One of the men, Michael Grant, former VP of Strategy, stood up suddenly. His face red, voice raised. "This is outrageous. You can't just come in here and—" Jacqueline calmly raised her hand. He stopped mid-sentence. Her voice was cool, steady. "Actually, I can. I own the company. And this culture ends today." The walk of accountability. Within minutes, security officers entered the room. Each of the 6 was quietly handed an envelope. Their official termination documents. Some shouted. Some protested. One tried to beg. But it was too late. The time for excuses had passed. As they were escorted out of the boardroom, they were greeted by something unexpected. Applause. Outside in the hallway, dozens of staff had gathered. They weren't clapping for revenge. They were clapping for hope. For the first time, someone at the top had finally stood up for them. For the quiet workers. For the women who were ignored. For the junior developers who were shut out of meetings. For the interns who were made to feel invisible. They clapped because change had come, and it had come with purpose, grace, and justice. This wasn't about ego. It was about integrity. Jacqueline didn't fire those 6 executives because of personal grudges. She didn't do it to make a statement. She did it because toxic leadership is a disease, and if left untreated, it spreads. She knew that you can't build innovation on fear. You can't expect loyalty from employees you belittle. And you can't expect greatness from a company that treats its people like they're replaceable. This wasn't a power move. It was a culture reset. A new day at Whitestone Tech. After the last executive was escorted out, Jacqueline stood and walked over to the glass wall overlooking the rest of the office. She looked down at the employees who had stopped working to witness what just happened. And then she smiled. Not out of satisfaction, but out of belief. Belief that real leadership listens. Belief that a company's strength isn't just in its revenue, but in its people. She turned to the remaining board members and said, "This company is about to become everything it was too afraid to be. No more fear. No more silence." Whitestone Tech had just met its future, and her name was Jacqueline Thomas. In the months that followed, everything changed at Whitestone Tech. Jacqueline restructured the company from the ground up. She promoted based on merit, not appearance. She launched diversity and inclusion programs. She increased employee benefits and mental health support. Productivity soared. Clients returned. Investors applauded. And most of all, she became a symbol, not just of Black excellence, not just of women in power, but of grace, strength, and change. She proved that leadership isn't about walking into a room and demanding attention. It's about listening, understanding, and acting when others are afraid to. And to this day, people still talk about that moment in the lobby, when a Black woman in a simple coat walked in, got ignored, and walked out owning the building. Sometimes the most powerful person in the room is the one nobody saw coming. Jacqueline Thomas didn't raise her voice. She didn't seek revenge. She simply walked in, changed the rules, and rewrote the future. This wasn't just a story of success. It was a story of dignity, discipline, and dominance. The kind that comes from believing in yourself when no one else does. So the next time someone underestimates you, remember, you don't need to announce your worth. You just need to show up and own the room. Power isn't loud, it's undeniable. Would you also like a call to action line at the end like, if this story inspired you, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more powerful true stories from Visionary Steps 09.